By dawn, the ridge is soft as breath. Mist peels from the low hills, and the reed and thatch roundhouses sit like beads on a string. Smoke threads rising from a dozen small chimneys. From above, the settlement looks tidy and fragile, a human knot tied to the land. As the camera cranes down, slow, intimate, breathing, we step from map into life. The village is waking. If you like this kind of deep animation, then now matches and slow motion details. Subscribe now to follow the full series, where we walk the Tiber Valley and line up the ancient places. Make sure comment below. I would love to know where are you watching from. Start with a single very small gesture. Dew on a woven mat at a hut entrance swept aside by a practiced hand. It's a moment as quiet as a page turn. That sweep marks the first step in a day of work, trade, and ritual. It connects the domestic scale to everything that follows. The potter's thumbprint, the smith's glowing crucible, the child who chases a pig between huts. These are the motions that build economies and memories. Bronze-clad craft sits at the heart of life here. Close to the village, a smith hunches over an anvil. The crucible spits and a hammer sings. Watch a droplet of red-hot bronze pour into a simple clay mold, a glitter that will become a blade, a pin, a mirror. These objects are not mere tools. They travel with people, mark status, and eventually rest in the ground as offerings. When we animate an engraving or a reconstruction, we don't just make metal gleam. We give you the moment that matter moved from hand to world. Trade threads this landscape. On the pebbled shore, the sewn boat heels as traders unload amphorae. Under straw, Aegean-style pottery is revealed. Its curve and glaze, an echo of distant shores. A quick graphic pulls up a salt trade map, arrows along the coast, nodes at river mouths. The village is not isolated but plugged into a network that reaches islands and distant markets. Imagine standing where the boat lands. The air thick with fish and resin, the murmur of different tongues exchanging measures and favors. Daily work constructs time. Women thresh grain on woven mats. The flail's rhythm is a kind of calendar. The seeds rise and fall like small weather patterns. Nearby, a potter shapes a thick bowl on a hand-formed base. Her thumbs carve a pattern that will be recognized across seasons. Children learn by doing, digging clay, tending nets, mending a net at dawn. These scenes are small, repetitive, and profound. The slow accumulation of practice that one day will underpin a city. Defense and vigilance thread through the village's days. On the hilltop, 2 sentries lift spears and scan, a horizon laced with smoke from hamlets beyond. The watch is both practical and symbolic, a boundary where daily habit meets the danger of chance. We frame this as silhouette and gesture. The long lens compresses distance so that the viewer feels the quiet tension of frontier life. It's not constant war. It's precaution woven into routine. Religion and ritual live alongside labor. At a sacred spring, dew beads on stone, while a child leaves a string of beads as an offering. In the dim light, an elder polishes a carved wooden idol. A mask simple and held with reverence. Night drums circle a low fire, and people share stories by hearthlight. Memory is rehearsed as instruction. We animate small acts, a bowl set on a stone at sunrise, smoke curling from it. Because those acts are how people make claims to land and kin. The later chronicles will turn some of these claims into genealogy. For now, they are local liturgy. Foodways anchor the year. Paddies are not yet the great terraces of later ages, but irrigation and wet patches move from experiment to system. Hands carefully plant seedlings into shallow water. Granaries rise on stilts to keep out rodents and damp. Salt, a miracle commodity, is gathered from marsh pans at low tide. Aerial shots show women scraping crystals onto boards and the glittering heaps that will be measured and traded. That grain and salt, more than any ideology, sustain families and fund alliances. Craft specialization accelerates change. Bronze mirrors are polished until they gleam. A smith fits a spear tip into a carved shaft. A woman dyes cloth in vats of plant extract until hues run deep. These objects carry style across valleys. An Aegean brooch worn by a trader becomes a petition for prestige. A bronze torque shown on an elder's cloak signals rank at the council. In our animation, we linger on those hands, the ones that shape, attach, and adorn, because they are the technology of belonging. Burial and memory record social difference. A staged reveal of a grave shows bronze daggers and beads laid on cloth. Some burials are sparse, others adorn. These differences are not just wealth, they are our claims. When artists of later centuries draw tombs and mounds, they flatten time. Modern animation can refill that flatness with the gestures of placement. The pause before a pendant is laid down, the hush that follows a rite. The economy is conversational. At the marketplace edge, salt is exchanged for grain in a series of intimate two-shots. Palms, tokens, the look that seals a deal. Ledger-like strains of pierced shells hint at accounting practice. Tokens threaded, value tracked. We treat these moments as puncta of decision. They are the small contracts that make trade predictable enough to matter. That predictability, repeated, allows larger projects, causeways tamped and leveled, a communal store's foundation, stones dressed by masons, a road widened by ox wheel ruts. Not every story here is slow and domestic. Storms arrive, and the village secures boats and reed roofs, with the same urgent choreography used for festivals and markets. On certain mornings, a funeral torch procession moves down a ridge, torches reflected in eyes, footsteps in time. These rituals compress social memory into gesture. They are the occasions on which people rehearse who they are and what they owe each other. We end this first part with a view from the ridge that stitches many of these threads together. The camera pulls back from a polished bronze mirror to reveal terraced fields falling toward a meandering river. On the riverbank, a sewn boat slips away, carrying amphorae and gossip. Farther along, on a low mound, a faint grouping of stones hints at a future memorial. A marker that centuries will refer to as a beginning. For now, it is simply a place where people pause, remember, and prepare. Stay with us. We will move from these village rhythms into the larger choreography of communal building. Hill fort ramparts, the shaping of seasonal fairs, mortuary architecture that claims territory, and finally the way these scattered lives fold into the oral genealogies that later become foundation myths. If you stick around until the end of the full video, we'll line up these scenes with the modern Tiber Valley and show what the same ground looks like today, what the past left visible and what it is buried. We pick up on the ridgeline where part 1 left us, but now the frame widens. Paths converge on an ordered shape, a hill fort whose ramparts have been widened and tamped by generations. Stones sit like a stitched seam along the earth. Wooden palisades rise and fall with the seasons. The camera sweeps from plan to profile, pulling us from the map into the worn tread of a rampart path. Here, labor and law meet face to face. The village's informal customs become communal decisions about who guards, who feeds, and who leads. Life at the rampart is work and theater. Builders heft sod and stone, their shoulders rhythmically matched to the same drums that once marked night vigils. As we animate an engraving of the fort, mortar dust becomes animated particles. Parallax pushes through scaffolding to a close of a mason's chisel, cutting into bedrock. In these cuts we show technique, how a causeway is tamped, how a wooden gate is barred. Because technology is the slow architecture of power. Where a village could manage its stores, a hill fort can protect a surplus. Where a surplus exists, elites can emerge. Those elites make themselves visible. We stage a council scene, elders seated on low stones, a bronze torque laid on display, a brooch passed like a token of office. These are not merely ornaments. They are instruments of recognition. Our camera lingers on the exchange of objects. A mirror, a torque, a pin, then pulls back to the assembly where decisions about riding, arbitration, and trade routes are made. Animation here is subtle. The glint on a bronze mirror becomes the visual cue for attention shifting in the frame. A parallax nudge reveals whispers turning into consensus. Seasonal fairs become the great public project of the century. Once simple exchanges beside a river, they now turn into calendared gatherings where grain, salt, textiles, and metal goods circulate in volume. We animate a fair by stitching close-up vignettes into a single sweep. Merchants unfurl cloth, potters wheel a fresh bowl, an itinerant smith tests a blade, and a singer, her bone flute voice thin and surprising, sells a tale with every chorus. Crowd motion is choreographed so that the eye can trace supply lines across the fairground, where goods arrive by cart, where market stalls cluster, where the communal granary records each transaction. In visual terms, the fair is a map in motion. In social terms, it is where reputation becomes currency. Mortuary architecture marks the landscape in the language of permanence. Small burials become larger tumuli. Later generations knit these mounds into legendary geographies. We stage the building of a tumulus as a long sequence. Foundations leveled, stones placed, grave goods arranged with ritual pause. The act of placing a bronze dagger beside a body is shot in slow, reverent close-up. Hands linger, breath is held. The camera hears the silence. In animation, the mount's profile is overlaid with later-age sketches, allowing viewers to see how a modest memorial becomes a landmark generations later. Trade continues to shape political possibility. Salt roads harden into seasonal routes lined with way stations and causeways. Amphorae with Aegean glaze become prized household objects and political gifts. Coastal traders carry news and fashion along with goods. We animate this network with map overlays that track the physical movement of objects, an amphora's path from shore to hearth, while cutaways reveal the social meaning, a gift exchanged to seal a marriage, a mirror given to secure an alliance. The camera finds the human face behind each object, the smith who signs a blade, the potter who stamps a pot with her mark, the trader who negotiates by the light of a fire. Conflict flares, but rarely in the dramatic style of epic battle paintings. Instead, it is asymmetric. Raids on a salt caravan, a night strike on an exposed store, the slow betrayal of a contested boundary. We stage one such moment without spectacle. Watchmen spot a shadowed party on the salt road. Torches flare, alarm calls roll. Villagers form a defensive line and the raiders melt into the scrub. The edit emphasizes human consequence. A burned granary, a family who must move, more than triumph. That human scale is the friction of history. Religion becomes public theater. Festivals mark planting and harvest, and processions carry votive objects from village to mound. We animate these events as sequences of small acts. A bowl placed at a spring, a banner hoisted on a pole, a dance around a marker stone, intercut with close shots of faces, hands, and feet. These rituals do two things at once. They bind communities in mutual obligation, and they create the narratives later scribes will fold into genealogies. In our visual essay, the camera cares for both the choreography and the quiet. A child leaving beads at a spring registers as both devotion and claim. Memory is curated through objects and places. A tumulus becomes a boundary, a marker that names a valley. A mirror becomes an heirloom that anchors a family story. We create and now visual matches here. An animated engraving of a mound dissolves into a present-day low hill with a plaque. A grey pottery shard lifts into a museum case, and then into the hands of a conservator cleaning it for display. Those morphs are the film's proof. Continuity is not just myth, it is a continuously produced archive of practice. The political consequences of all this slow change are profound. Where hill fort leaders consolidate control over grain, they can support retinues and standardize obligations. Where trade flourishes, some towns evolve into permanent market centers. Where burial mounds pile up, claimants to territory can point to physical proof of ancestral presence. These dynamics do not create a state in a single.
The boundary stone clearly marks our territory. We must retaliate.
Violence will only bring ruin upon us all. There has to be another way. And then, from the shadows of the Capitoline hill, the wolf appeared. Her eyes... Loop it through here, like this. Now pull it tight. Good, you have the rhythm of it now.
They prepare the ground for later aggregation. Our job as storytellers is to make that preparation visible. The ledger, the taxed salt, the widened causeway, the consolidated oath. The final part of our story ties these threads into the texture of the present. We step from animated reconstructions into modern landscapes. Follow our parallax match as a tumulus engraving becomes a grassy knoll beside a commuter road. A close-up on a bronze torque in a museum glass case is matched by a shot of a child's necklace hanging in a modern artisan's stall. These links are not rhetorical flourishes. They are traces. When we walk the Tiber Valley today, the street plan, low mounds, and preserved field boundaries are visible if you know how to read them. Our then-now sequences show what time kept and what it changed. We end where many beginnings become story. A slow crane up from a low mound to a horizon where the Tiber slices the plain. The voice softens. Imagine a later chronicler, centuries from this moment, smoothing the mess of human trade and toil into a founding tale. That act is part political necessity, part human longing. Origins make claims legible, yet history's texture resists tidy endings. The mound, the mirror, the road, each keeps the friction of many hands. In our animation, those residual textures are the lost image. The polished bronze catching a single sunbeam, a child's footprint drying in mud, a reed-thatched roof glowing orange at dusk. If this journey through labor, ritual, and memory helped you see how small acts build futures, subscribe for more. Tell us in the comments which site you want animated next. A tumulus, a salt road, or the hill fort itself. Share the video if you found this useful. It helps us make more of these layered then now stories. Thanks for watching and staying with me.